Hey folks, this is Rhykker with a commentated gameplay video for newly released action RPG Warhammer 40k Inquisitor Martyr. This is part 2 in a 3-part video series in which we explore this game. So we're going to thank Neocore Games for sponsoring this video series and instruct you folks to check out part 1 if you haven't, in which we give an introduction, an overview of the game, what sets it apart from other action RPGs, and what is similar. Also, if you're looking for more information on the game, you can check out the link in the video description to go straight to the Steam page. Now, this video will be all about showing off the gameplay. We're going to show 2 full missions. These are pre-recorded, and I'll be adding my commentary as we're going through. So right now, we're on our ship. This is like our town hub in this game. Clicking the star map, this brings up the map to find all your different missions. This vessel right here, this is the Martyr. Anyway, so it's the object of focus for the main story mission. So this game has a main campaign. I believe that is only playable single player, but there is also co-op and a PvP mode in this game as well. So similar to Diablo, you have your campaign and then you have adventure mode. So adventure mode is co-op, but the campaign I believe is just single player. So currently I'm level 14. I'm a little deep into the campaign at this point. Right now I just got a new gun. I'm testing that out right now. I believe it's a Melt-A-Gun. So I'm looking at the new powers, Melt-A-Blast, trying to get acquainted with them. I've got a little buddy with me right now. That is unusual. So this is someone that you're going to meet in the campaign. You don't always have a companion. You generally do not. But as you can see, I'm testing out the various abilities of this Melt-A-Gun. You have a weapon hot swap option. My main gun is a grenade launcher. That's for my AoE. I like to have a backup gun in which I have a single target ability. Something to deal with the bosses, the big tough enemies with lots of hit points. Now, my buddy with me right now is actually dealing a lot of damage on his own. He's got that big AoE bubble around him. I'm not too familiar with all of his powers, but as you can see, like other aRPGs, loot will drop, be it credits or gold, or items as well. Not to the same... you don't get as many items dropping as in Diablo or other action RPGs, but at the end of a mission you as well get a loot box sort of thing that opens up and you get additional items as well. Now, during a mission, you cannot open up your inventory. It's like a Greater Rift in Diablo. Your items are locked until you're back in town. So right now, you can see on the minimap over here that you can see where all the enemies are. It's very useful. Again, the game is a little bit more tactical than a standard action RPG. I have to make strategic choices between swapping between my 2 weapons. I don't know whether this is the best strategy. This is just a strategy that I've developed. My character right now is a Crusader, so between the 3 different character types, you have basically your warrior, your assassin, and your mage. I'm the warrior, the Crusader. It's sort of like a paladin, I guess you can say. Just without necessarily healing abilities. So within the class, you can then pick a sort of subclass specialization. I went for area damage. I didn't go for the sword and board melee guy. I went for someone that specializes in the heavy guns that deal area damage. So that's why I like to have my grenade launcher. Shotgun is another option. Flamethrower is always a very fun option. And depending on which item you have equipped, which weapon you have equipped, you'll have 4 different skills. It's like your move set, your skill set, and you'll generally have a primary fire. Well, you'll always have a primary fire, and then your other skills might be on different cooldowns, depending on the weapon, of course. But the cooldown could range from a couple seconds to just a fraction of a second, just something that you can't spam the ability continuously. And some of these powers will be better at, for instance, penetrating armor. That is a big concept in this game, that some enemies are armored and some weapons are more or less effective against armor. There's also some weapons that apply crowd control effects, like knockback or knockdown. Now, there's a mechanic in this game, I forget the term exactly, but it equates to resistance to knockdown, or crowd control rather. You can see it, it's the green bar right there on that unbound grunt. So the more full that bar is, the more immune to crowd control an enemy is. You generally don't see this on little enemies, but on the big tough enemies and bosses, they'll have this bar. We as players also have this bar. It's over by the health on the lower left of the screen, which just disappeared now. We have our own crowd control immunity meter. So we have the health bar, and then there's a sort of circular colored bar, I guess, around us. As that gets depleted, we become more susceptible to being slowed and otherwise crowd controlled. So there are some weapons that are really good at removing crowd control resistance, and there are effects that you might want to hold off on until you've reduced an enemy's crowd control resistance enough. The lower it is, I believe, so let's say, for instance, it's at 50%, I think that means that 50% of the time your crowd control will work, or the crowd control will be 50% effective. In general, I try to wait for around maybe 25-30% crowd control resistance left before trying to knock down an enemy. And it's always really fun with the shotgun, for instance, the secondary fire. The cooldown on the knockdown ability is basically just long enough for the enemy to get back up, and then you can, bam, knock him down again. So it's some nice chained CC, some nice chained crowd control that I always find hilarious. So the Inner Sanctum here. I think we're gonna have to split up with our buddy shortly here. Again, with the buddy it's maybe a little bit easier, but this is a very rare occurrence. Most of the time, basically every other mission, you're alone. Sometimes, so you get some interesting missions where you have to defend a location. And they might give you some just mooks, some goons. Not a big tough guy like this, but just regular old NPCs that die pretty easily. And you have to fight off waves of enemies, and there will be between waves, maybe you're going to get some item drops to place deployable defenses, like a minefield or a turret, so you get to pick where to put them. Moving around here. My main tactic with the grenade launcher, so my main tactic first off is to always have my grenade launcher out. Whenever you swap weapons, it takes a moment to switch, and then all your cooldowns are reset, so you can't just be swapping back and forth willy-nilly. It is a tactical decision, so I always start off with my grenade launcher. I press my number 2, which lobs a grenade up into the air and then a good distance away, and then spreads out a nice chunk of area damage. So I like to use that as my opener often when there are multiple enemies to target. And then I'll generally just default as well to the main attack of the grenade launcher. And then if there's a tough enemy, that's when I swap to my secondary, my single target gun. Right now, our mission is indoors. I know a question that I got on the previous video was, are all the missions indoors? They are not. Right now, this is on the Martyr. So, a lot of the campaign takes place on the Martyr, but the other random missions, there's outdoor missions. You go to different planets, different worlds, different locales. It's all sci-fi, but you also fight different types of enemies. So right now, we've got these heretics, these I guess humans who have gone against the Emperor. And you have your ranged enemies, you have your melee enemies. As you may be noticing, a lot of the environment is destructible. I'm going to take cover right there. So I just got behind a pillar and I pressed space. That's, on PC, the button to take cover. I don't know what it'll be on console when that releases. I'm on fire right now, not in a good way. But I typically don't take cover. I bit off a bit more than I can chew. I'm waiting for my health to regenerate a little bit there before I keep going. And I'm realizing, hey, I can just sneak past these guys to complete the mission. It's not mandatory, you know, to kill everyone necessarily. I mean, it's more fun to kill everyone and you can get more loot, but I just want to see, can I just sneak past here? There generally are, however, toward the end of missions, chests. So I might want to poke around a little bit, try to see if there's a chest that I've missed before exiting. That's the good thing. It doesn't just end the mission immediately, it gives you an option to exit when you are willing and ready to do so. So right now the mission is complete, but I'm going to run around a bit, try to find a chest. I have a suspicion that it might be up towards the north, because I'm looking on the minimap. The chest will appear on the minimap, and there it is. It's 2 chests, in fact. I am very pleased with my decision to not exit right away here. We'll see what's in the chest. I mean, we're not expecting giant loot drops, but, you know, we might get something in there. Let's see. Well, we got a last pistol at least, so... Just like in a standard RPG, or at least in Diablo 3, if you are not going to use an item, you can either sell it or you can break it down for crafting materials. So, this right here, we've got our little loot box at the end. This opens up and this gives us additional rewards. Up here that I just moused over, those are the items that I got while just going through the level. And now I'm mousing over the items that you get as a reward for successfully completing the mission. Now I'm also getting another reward for, as you complete missions in different systems, you will gain influence, and you'll, I guess, get rewards for increasing your influence. This is our inventory screen. I'm looking over, right, so I got another loot box for achieving a certain amount of influence in that sector. Purple items, always excited to get Artificer grade items. They are the second highest tier of item that you can get, with Relic being the highest. It goes from basically gray to blue to green to purple to, I guess, gold or brown. So right now I'm comparing the power rating. The fist, the number near the fist, that's the power rating. That it tends to be the most important number to look at here. If you have items of similar power rating, then you might want to look at the specific affixes, but for the time being, your power rating is, I'm given to understand, is possibly the most important stat, at least until you get to the end game. Now, another thing to note is that different items have different powers. So right now I'm shuffling around my inventory. I'm trying to keep the best of every grade of item, at least that I'm interested in. So I've got a shotgun on standby, I've got my grenade launcher that I have equipped, but, you know, if I feel the need to switch to a shotgun or to a flamer, I have them ready. Again, it's an entirely different skill set with every piece of item. The signums, those little skulls with the wings coming out of them, you can hold 4 of those. And those are more just kind of like, I guess, charms. You can call them sort of charms, like in Diablo 2. So now I am salvaging some things. You can see when I'm salvaging, it gives you a percentage chance to get a given component from an item. So you're not guaranteed to get components, but, you know, you salvage enough items and it averages out as you go along. So that was my in-town vendor. I salvaged some items, I sold others. I want to make sure I have a nice balance of crafting materials as well as gold or credits, because I'm still buying with credits crafting materials, for instance. So now I'm getting ready to do my next mission. Rather than doing another campaign mission on the Martyr, I want to show you guys a different kind of mission. Again, just to show that we do have some outdoor missions. So zooming out, looking at now a different... Well, the star system that we're in, zooming out again to look at, I think, the sector. Yeah, the Tenebra subsector. And the numbers around there kind of give the difficulty relative to my power rating, which is 382. So instead I'm going to show you an Uther's Tarot mission. This is sort of like crafting a map in Path of Exile or a Greater Rift in Diablo 3. So there's a limit on how many of these you can do. But when I put them together, I can pick the modifiers. So this is more similar to Path of Exile, for instance. So there are modifiers here that will increase, or they'll modify the difficulty of the mission, and they'll modify the rewards of the mission. So I'm crafting this mission now. It's also going to determine the mission type, for instance. So, it's an interesting system here with Uther's Tarot. It does feel like there probably is an optimal setup here, but you do have options, you have choices. And what's interesting is that when you increase the difficulty, it's not just like monsters have more health or monsters deal more damage. I have a modifier here. I believe I applied the modifier to this one. I like that cathedral right there. It's a pretty cool space cathedral. There's one modifier that basically, once enemies die, they have a chance to respawn as Chaos Demons. Well, not necessarily respawn, but they die and then from their corpse issues a Chaos Demon. So, that changes the mission in a significant way. It's added difficulty, but it is an interesting way of adding difficulty, for instance. One of the modifiers that I applied was basically selecting what type of loot is more likely to drop. So let's say you use heavy weapons, and you can pick a modifier that makes heavy weapon drops more common. And there's also something that you can pick to determine what type of reward you'll get. So I believe I picked the one that guarantees me at least one purple item. And I also picked the reward that gives me more fate points. So fate points are used to craft these missions. They're not very easy to come by. These missions are very rewarding, so I feel that getting some fate points back seems like a good strategy, but I'm by far not an expert at this game, so I don't know. So as you can see here, we're on an alien planet. There's a lot of melee, big groups of melee enemies that charge at me, so I always like to open again with my number 2. But then we've also got those big space marines. I guess they're Chaos Space Marines? No, Word Bearers. Word Bearers? World Bearers? My knowledge of 40k lore isn't the best. I know a little bit. Word Bearers. Okay. I'm sure you 40k guys know exactly the significance of all these. But it's always cool to see the factions. Like, I just remember, kind of briefly reading up on the different factions. I just loved all the different iconography of all the various Space Marines and Chaos Space Marines. Look at that big piece of cover there. Note the hole that I punctured in it. I think I'm gonna shoot it some more right now just to show off the destruction. So much in the environment is destructible. It's really cool. So again, we see the difference between my tactics. Right now I'm getting a little bit overwhelmed. So normally the melt-a-gun that I have equipped right now is a medium-range weapon. I normally have a long-range weapon for my single target. It's 1, meant for single target, and 2, meant for, okay, I'm taking a lot of heat, I gotta back the F away. Unfortunately, so this is my first time, well, technically this is my second mission now with the melt-a-gun. I'm realizing I have to get very close, and this feller over here, the champion, does a lot of melee damage. I'm taking some heavy heat over there. You can see, I don't know which way to point, but my health bar, I'm at about 50% health right now. I used a stim pack, which is like a health globe or a healing potion. I just took a lot of damage to my crowd control resistance right there. You see I'm in the yellow, I'm about 50%. So I'm trying to let that regen a bit. Back into the green now, so I'm a bit more comfortable there. But this particular engagement is proving a little tricky for me, because that guy keeps jumping on me, dealing some big damage, so I'm trying to kind of kite him away, I guess you can say. Or trying to take them out one at a time, just so that I'm not taking all that damage at once. So the enemies have really strong engagement tools often. And, so just quickly back to those healing potions. You can see the sort of like stim pack needle icon off to the side by my health, and there's a bunch of globes as well. So that shows how many I have left. I have invested points into getting more of those. Here at this point I'm just tanking the flamer. But there's that guy in the back, the commander or commando I believe. He spawns additional things. Yeah, the commander right there. So, he's gonna keep spawning ads until I take him out, but I know that if I take him out, his ads will just die. Like, those sentry turrets, those are him. So I'm just gonna try to alpha him down as quickly as possible here. That's the other big tool in my arsenal. My number 4 power. You can see it over on the hotbar. That is my salvo of missiles. Whenever you see, like, the missiles shoot out from my shoulders and bombard an area, while that is good area damage, I tend to save that for dealing with bosses on single target. That's sort of my ultimate ability. And I've invested a lot of skill points into lowering the cooldown on that and increasing the amount of resource that I have. Because there's two things at play. I am limited on a cooldown by how often I can use that power, and the second limiting factor is the resource. I generate resource to be able to use that power. So I've been investing skill points into helping with both of those things. Because again, this specific power is very important to my strategy. Now, I guess I never explained what this mission's about. You can see over there AA battery status. The objective here is to disable those 3 anti-aircraft missile batteries. They're marked on the map, and I think I'm approaching one right now. I think we're getting close to our first. They're generally pretty well defended once you get right up near them. Those tend to be the toughest fights on this map, because I've played this map a couple times. You could repeat missions. So you have campaign missions. You have just random world missions. Then you have those Uther Tarot crafted missions. And then you also have your special assignments, which are like mini campaigns that are procedurally generated. So there's definitely a variety of things that you can be doing in this game. I'm going a little slow right now just because my health was at about 50%. I wanted to give it some time to regenerate. And depending on which sector you go to, you'll fight different enemies, you'll fight in different locales. And I've noticed that my strategies have had to change up as well, depending on what enemies that I'm tackling. I'm not at endgame, you know, I'm level 14, which is... leveling is slower, I should specify, than in Path of Exile or in Diablo 3. So, like, level 14, you know, in D3 or Path of Exile, you can do in maybe 2 hours or less. Well, in Diablo, you can do that in, like, maybe 2 minutes, but... so, leveling is a little slower. I think max level is 50 in this game. I'm taking a lot of health, a lot of damage, rather. You saw I got close to the skull. That skull icon appeared on my health bar. That was a close call. I've popped another health potion. And you only get those back by finding them on your given map. To clarify, whenever you load into a map, it's always at full resource, including potions. But the potions you use throughout a mission, by the end of the mission, or rather, as you're using them, you have to find health packs on the map. So, as you can see there, once I killed the enemies, I disabled the AA turret, and then there was a teleportation pad. I could have just ran back to this place, but they put a convenient teleportation pad to save you on some backtracking. That's not always the case, but when it is there, it's very appreciated. The first time, however, that I found one of those teleportation pads, I thought it was an enemy thing, so I destroyed it. So then I had to backtrack. In my defense, there are some enemy teleportation pads as well. So, I'm pretty sure they were colored differently. So that's a supply box. That's not for health packs. That's for, you can see my number 3 icon. I believe the number 3 that I have equipped right now, my power, which could be different things. It could be a grenade, it could be a personal shield. What I have right now is what's I believe called digital weapons, which gives me a temporary buff to my attacks, basically. So I think you saw me knock down that Space Marine, for instance. Again, that's because I depleted his crowd control resistance, and then I was able to just, bam, take him down. In general, crowd control resistance goes down with health. So it's not like you have to pick between attacking their health or their crowd control resistance. So as you can see here, the health is going down faster than crowd control resistance, but sometimes, depending on the attack, it might favor removing... it's called suppression. Suppression is the mechanic. Suppression resistance. So sometimes you'll see, if I get low on health and low on my suppression resistance, you'll see a little word notification above my character say suppressed. And I'm going to move slower. I'm going to be much more vulnerable to getting stunned, which is always terrifying. Because it's happening at the worst time since you're already low on health. But, aligning my map here, as you can see, it took some getting used to get accustomed to the rotation of the point of view. But right there I got a medical supply. Again, right now I have quite a bit of potions available to me, but when you start out you have very few. Very few available to you. I'm gonna take a quick sip of water here. Inoculator, that's what it's called. Inoculator. Injector. Health potion. Just so that we all understand what we're talking about here. Getting close now to the second objective. Again, different enemies will engage in different ways. Some will just run up to you, others will have a way of closing the gap very quickly, and others will just pelt you from afar. And some will set you on fire, applying a damage over time. That's probably something you're noticing as being different from most action RPGs. I'm backtracking a lot. I am kiting enemies a lot. I don't think it's just because I'm terrible at this game. I'd hope that's not the case. Because I am as well one of the tankier classes. Or I am rather the tankiest class. I'm not on the tankiest build for the tankiest class. I could have a shield if I wanted to, but I'd rather carry a heavy weapon, a two-hander. But you could, for instance, go sword and board, melee weapon and a shield, or even a shield and a one-handed ranged weapon. But those tend to be the single targets, so I want it to be a heavy weapon specialist here. Now, I also have a power, basically, a passive power that lets me regenerate health whenever I deal area damage, so that helps with my sustain mid-battle. Also, I'm not sure if you're noticing, but when I kill the enemy, and then a demon, monster-type creature spawns in its place, that's what I was referring to at the start there, when we're applying those tarot cards to modify the difficulty. Alright, here we go. This should be getting close to the final fight now. You can see on my mini-map that I'm very close to the objective. So we're probably gonna have to fight another one of those commanders. And I've just found, in general, I guess you can say in that regard, it's a little bit MMO-ish, in the sense that in an MMO, you know, you try to aggro an enemy, pull him, and then fight individually rather than fighting everything at the same time. I think if you just run into a huge group of enemies, particularly if there are ranged enemies, because the melee enemies you can sort of just walk around, they're easier to dodge. The ranged enemies are a little trickier, and it could suddenly be a lot of DPS coming your way. And the ranged enemies go down a lot more quickly, you know, relative to the melee enemies. Well, to be fair, that depends. You have your minion-type melee enemy that there's just a whole swarm of them, but they die very easily. But then you're just kind of typical ranged enemy. Sorry, your typical melee enemy. Like these guys here that are these demons, they're tougher melee enemies. I'm trying to just get that commander down, but as you can see, I'm taking a ton of damage, and I'm having to fall back. You can't treat this game mindlessly, brainlessly. Got my purple there. Pleased with that. Having to pop my inoculators. I got plenty of health. The thing is, your inoculator, your potion, it has a cooldown as well. And again, you can apply things, which I have been, to reduce the cooldown on the inoculator so that you can pop your healing potions more often. There you go. I am overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed. Sorry. So once your suppression resistance is gone, you see overwhelmed above your head. But I managed to power through it. I'm gonna kill this last melee dude. And that's another thing. The tougher melee dudes tend to as well have ranged attacks, just so that you can't cheese it completely and entirely kite them. But you know, so you have to dodge their ranged attack as well. Thankfully, they have a lot of so there's not a whole lot of unavoidable damage in this game, I feel. The enemy attacks are often telegraphed or dodgeable. There are exceptions to the rule, of course, but in general, smart play can prevent a lot of damage. Or more cautious play. I do wonder, if you were to play melee, sword and board, how do you survive? Like, this flamethrower guy, for instance. I mean, I guess you can kind of dance around him, but I'm curious to know how the pure melee types deal with huge groups of enemies. Hope I grabbed that refractor field. Yep. So, loot is always important to pick up in this game. Again, you either sell it or you use it for the crafting materials. To be fair, though, I haven't reached endgame, so maybe at endgame you're not going to pick up everything. But again, I don't think you find enough loot to get to a point where you're okay with leaving some behind. In Path of Exile, in Diablo, loot piñata games, you get so much loot that you're okay with leaving loot behind. It becomes an optimum strategy to leave loot behind and only get the best loot. So far in this game, loot isn't bountiful enough that you would ever leave any behind, but again, I am not at endgame. And part of the reason that credits and crafting materials are important to me, at least at my current level, is one, I have to buy crafting plans, and you buy those with credits. And two, sometimes I will buy equipment upgrades, but that's mostly for the cases where I don't have the material, I don't have the plan rather to, yet to craft the item myself. However, when you craft an item upgrade, it rolls random stats, including its power rating. So you can, for instance, get unlucky and not get your maxed out power rating. And if you just keep crafting and crafting and crafting, especially at low level, it seems like a waste of resources. If you get lucky and the shop has a max rolled power rating, then there you go. So I like that it keeps the vendor meaningful, crafting and the vendor, and item drops. These are all, at least for me at my level, all equally viable sources of equipment upgrades. Those flamers, though. So, yeah, taking some heavy damage right there. Fighting them in a corridor is a bad idea. I'm fighting flamers who deal sustained damage over time in a straight line in an area where I'm forced to stay in their path. So I'm trying to bring them out to an area where I can better dodge their attack there. Sometimes I'll play more aggressively. I think overall I probably play overly cautiously. I can probably be more aggressive, but the only time I've died in this game was in a ridiculously difficult mission. Well, difficult for me at least for my build. I don't know. I was fighting a boss that was a literal tank, an actual tank. Like not like, oh, he's a really tanky boss. Like it was a freaking tank with a tank turret, side guns, a charge attack. It was crazy. I went through all of my healing, and at that point, I didn't have the sustain to handle him. I tried to play as smart as possible, but I guess I mismanaged my resources throughout the rest of the mission. I don't know. It was a tough fight, and I wiped a couple times against him before I was able to take him out. That's the only time I've died in the game, because again, I play overly defensively, and I think that right there was our last boss to kill, so that's going to be turning in our mission right there. So I think that's where we're going to wrap up our video. As a reminder, there's currently a sale ongoing on all Warhammer games, including this one on Steam. So if you are interested in what you're seeing here, if you think you'd enjoy this game, I encourage you to go check that out. And again, you can check out the link in the video description to be directed straight to the Steam page. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out our first video where we go over the full mechanics of this game, and subscribe to join Rhykkers Raiders for more gaming content.